Hello, good game. Welcome back, ghouls and goblins. I hope you're having a magical day. Thank you so much for taking the time to support the channel. We have 5 new Crimson VOW decks to showcase today within this theory crafting video. Slash that thumbs up button down to pieces to help support the channel. Subscribe as well to help me meet my goals and maybe even become a Patreon if you're an absolute baller. So with this out of the way, like I said, 5 new decks to showcase today. We better get after it because that's going to take some time. Alrighty, first up, we have Mono Red Aggro. Super excited about this. I'm not sure where Mono Red Aggro falls. We want to try out Mono Red Vampires first, though. So we have a ton of really nice vampires within the build and a single werewolf that thinks it's a vampire. I don't know why. Sometimes these animals get confused when they're surrounded with, multiples of another breed. It happens. We have the Pit Fighter, though. This is not a new card by any means. It's a 1-drop 2/1 that can pay to discard a card, sack a vampire to draw 2 cards if your opponent's lost life this turn, which is really good late game. Maybe there's blockers in front of it, and you can find some form of damage to get rid of them. The Voldaren Epicure for 1 mana, I couldn't believe the value within this card. It's brand new, a common, which is odd. When it enters the battlefield, deal 1 damage to each opponent and create a blood token. We can sacrifice the blood token by paying 1, tapping it, discarding a card, and then, of course, sacrificing the blood token to draw a card. So that's really nice. We have draw through the Pit Fighter, we have draw through the Epicure, and it does base damage of 1 when it enters anyways, which is, pretty cool. Then the Bloodthirsty Adversary. This is a 2/2 with haste, getting in right away for aggro damage. We can pay 3 any number of times, right, on turn 5, on turn 8, if we're getting there with mana, to put that many +1/+1 counters per 3 mana that we pay, and we can also cast an instant or sorcery from our grave for free, which is very, very, very cool. Speaking of instances and sorceries that we can cast from our grave for free, Neonate's Rush for 3 mana, instant speed, 1 less to cast if we control a vampire, so basically always playing it for 2, dealing 1 damage to target creature, 1 damage to its controller, and drawing a card, which is really nice, and that's something that Mono Red kind of doesn't have a lot of, but we see a ton of it within this build, right? And then we have the Vampire's Vengeance, also for 3 instant speed, dealing 2 damage to each non-vampire creature and creating a blood token. More draw, wiping out these other aggro decks. Really excited for that. So those are our instances and sorceries that we'll be casting a second time through the Bloodthirsty Adversary. We have the Cemetery Gatekeeper here as a 2-drop as well, a 2/1 with first strike, and when it enters the battlefield, exile a target card from a graveyard. Whenever a player plays a land or casts a spell that shares a card type with the exiled card, Cemetery Gatekeeper deals 2 damage to that player. Wow. That's absolutely incredible. That is consistent chip damage whenever they play a land, whenever they play a creature. That's a stackable effect as well, which is absolutely insane. Then we have the new Chandra Planeswalker, Dress to Kill for 3 mana, 3 loyalty, +1 to add 1 mana, dealing 1 damage up to 1 target player or planeswalker. This is cool because now it's like you get a mail-in rebate to reduce its cost or spend that 1-drop, whether it's the Pit Fighter or the Epicure, or maybe, we have 4, we can cast something for 2. So it's really, really nice. And then +1, exile the top card of your library. If it's red, you may cast it this turn. More draw for us. I love it. -7, exile the top 5 cards of your library. You may cast red spells from among them this turn. You get an emblem with whenever you cast a red spell, this emblem deals X damage to any target where X is the amount of mana spent to cast that spell. Really, really good. If you can get to the -7, it's going to take 4 +1s to get there, so I don't really know about that, but if you do, it's going to be insane. What I think will be unexpected and work out in our favor is the Dominating Vampire. A 3/3 for 3. When it enters the battlefield, it gains, you gain control of target creature with mana value less than or equal to the number of vampires that you control until the end of turn. Untap that creature, it gains haste until the end of turn, right? So we have a ton of creatures. The Pit Fighter, the Epicure, the Adversary, the Gatekeeper, the Dominating Vampire. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different vampires in the deck, all with 4 copies of non-legendary that we can stack. That should be really, really good. And then we have the Werewolf that thinks it's a vampire. Reckless Stormseeker for 3 mana. It's a 2/3. At the beginning of combat on your turn, target creature you control gets +1/+0 and gains haste until the end of turn. Daybound. Nightbound, it's a 3/4, and that creature will get +2/+0 haste and trample, which is really nice. And that's going to increase the effectiveness of these lower drop creatures. It also can give itself haste, which is sick. It's going to give this dominating vampire haste. So, you know, it's a 3/3 swinging in. We have a 2/3 swinging, and then we're grabbing whatever creature they have as well, which is pretty darn cool. Den of the Bugbear to make that goblin. It's a 3/2 that makes the 1/1. We all know this. And then just like the basic lands, right? So this is our first deck. Mono red vampires. Really excited to play it. I'm not entirely sure about the Stormseeker, but I think it's good enough. I think it's good enough. We don't have any vampire tribal effects really other than Vampire's Vengeance and Neonate Rush. We only need one vampire for Neonate Rush, and this is just going to help keep all of our creatures alive because they're all all vampires, and the Stormseeker is a 2/3, so it's not going to die, right? So this was our first deck. Let's get into the second. This is the Vow of, Crimson Vow, Angel Fire. I get it. Angel Fire Ignition, my favorite card from Midnight Hunt. So, you know, we're starting there, and then, you know, I seen the Creepy Puppeteer. What an amazing card. A 4/3 with haste for 4. Whenever it attacks, if you attacked with exactly one other creature this combat, you may have that creature's base power and toughness become 4/3 until the end of turn. Holy Toledos. This is absolutely incredible because we have the Fireblade Charger in deck. Whenever it dies, it deals damage equal to its power to any target, right? And that power is now 4. Very, very good. Plus, we have the Luminarch Aspirant in deck, which can put those +1/+1 counters on the Charger. Angel Fire Ignition puts those counters on the Charger. Showdown of the Scalds puts those counters on the Charger, which is absolutely insane. Breaking away from that, we have the Hopeful Initiate in the deck. It's a 1/2 with training, which is so insane considering we're using, like I said, that Luminarch Angel Fire Showdown to push up our other creatures. We also have the Creepy Puppeteer, which probably wouldn't help it because you'd have to be attacking with 3 creatures. But nonetheless, you can put those counters on it. Then you can pay 3 to remove 2 to destroy a artifact or enchantment, which is so good in current meta. Story Chariot, we'll see you later. And then we've got the Binder to get into their hand. You know, the Flying Evasion is really nice. The Stormseeker giving us haste on things, giving us trample on things. Redain, making their field wipes cost more, which is great. And the Vigilance Snowlands and tapped. Blade Historian for double strike, right? So, you know, the Stormseeker giving the Blade Historian, you know, potentially haste and trample it's too much. It's just simply too much. And then, yeah, that's kind of the deck. We've got the Sundown Pass is a new land. The Needleverge Passway is a, you know, returning land. And then just, you know, our regular plains and mountains here. So this deck, I think, is going to slap. This looks like a really fun deck. You know, we've got super strong 1-drops that are empowered by both our 2-drops, our 3-drops, and our 4-drops, which is really nice. And then, you know, going wide with everything, smacking with the Blade Historian. I would have liked to have run more Creepy Puppeteers, but I think it is more beneficial to focus on the Historian and just run the Puppeteer on the Charger if you need, of course, right? So all those counters on the Charger, you know, Angel Fire is going to give the Charger trample, and then the Puppeteer is going to push it up by an additional 3 potentially, right? So it's going to be pretty insane. With that all out of the way, thank you for your time and attention through this Boros build. Things I've considered were the Battlefield Raptor would be really good with the Creepy Puppeteer if we went that way, but I think then we're trimming the Blade Historian because the Blade Historian wants everyone to attack, whereas the Creepy Puppeteer just wants to attack with itself, with another creature, and then you have lots of removal, right? So that's going to be a different build, I think. Moving into our third deck, we have just 3 more to go. This plus 2 more. Naya Bard class. Oh my god, you guys. Helena and Alina partners. This is a 2/3 with first strike and reach. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put X +1/+1 counters on another target creature you control, where X is Helena and Alina's power. That creature will gain haste until the end of turns, right? So the power when it comes in is 2. So 2 +1/+1 counters on another target creature we control. They don't leave. They stay there, and we get more every turn. Absolutely insane. So the fact that we can now put counters on Helena and Alina with our Bards class and reduce the cost of it is absolutely insane. So as soon as I seen Helena and Alina, I knew that I wanted to make a Bards class deck, and then we're kind of filling everything in like we would before. Other new cards that we have, Torrent's Fist of Angels. This is a 2/2, and whenever you cast a spell, create a 1/1 green and white human soldier creature token with training, which is really good. That's going to help us go wide. We're casting a ton of spells all the time, so that's going to make a ton of tokens. Other than that, everything in the deck is a legendary, which allows Essica, God of the Tree, to give them vigilance and allow them to tap for mana. Woof. So, you know, we're going really wide. We're attacking with vigilance, and then once we've attacked, we tap, generate all of that mana, push it into the Inferno of the Star Mounts, can't be countered, flying haste. We can reduce it through the Bards class. We can power it up through the Bards class, and then, you know, sinking our mana into it, giving it +1/+0, so we get confirmed damage. And we might even have its power become 20 if we can go wide enough for that 20 damage to any target, which is insane. Of course, we do have the Chariot in the deck as well. Vorinclex is in the deck. Magda is in the build here with Jasperia's Sentinel, our only non-legendary other than the Bards class. Mink's Beloved Ranger here as well to go wide with 2 bodies. Not a lot new with this deck. However, what we did get will really, really help it through Helena and Alina and Torrent's Fist of Angels. So super excited to try this build out again. Plus, we got those lands, right? We have Rockfall Vale included in the deck. Sundown Pass in the deck, which is amazing for this Naya build for the land or mana consistency. Boom! Into Mr. Bounce. This is a mono blue build focused around the one and only Consuming Tide. For 4 mana, sorcery speed, each player chooses a non-land permanent they control. Return all non-land permanents not chosen this way to their owner's hands. When you draw a card for, then you draw a card for each opponent who has more cards in their hand than you, right? So you're gonna bounce everything and probably draw a card. Really, really cool beans. And then, you know, this is kind of like that midway cast while we're waiting for the Cyclone Summoner, which is going to bounce all non-lands, non-giants, non-wizards back to their opponent's hand, which is really cool. Speaking of wizards, we have Lear, Disciple of the Drowned for 5 mana, 3/4, allows us to cast things from our grave. It can't be countered, nor can any spell once she's in play. Well, she can be countered, but once she's in play, nothing can be countered, I should say, which is really good. And then we can play things again from our grave, which is great, including Consuming Tide and then not bouncing our Disciple, which is so good. We have another wizard within the Hermit and the backside of the Hermit as well. Both of them are wizards. We can counter, and then, you know, we get a flyer that can counter as well, which is decent, or make it so things can't be countered. But if we have Liar, you know, that's not happening anyways. Fading Hope to bounce, Divide by 0 to bounce. Glasspool Mimic copies the Cyclone Summoner, which is cool. And then Memory Deluge to draw, right? Not a lot going on here. We have Hall of the Storm Giants, Field of Ruin to keep the lands in check, and then just a lot of islands. So very, very, very straightforward deck that I think might actually be really cool, right? So we're not necessarily ramping in with Simic like we typically would, but we're just, you know, kind of playing that bounce game, right? Fading Hope bounces, Divide by 0 bounces, Consuming Tide bounces, and Cyclone Summoner bounces. Plus, we have the replayability through Fading Hope, Divide by 0, and Consuming Tide through Lear. I think it's going to be a really, really annoying deck to play against if you're a mono green build, right? So that is Mr. Bounce. We are on to the last deck, you guys. This has been quite a marathon. Thanks for hanging in there with me. This is a Simic ramp deck. It says Kraken Reanimator, but I kind of changed it midway. Nonetheless, we are building around the Hullbreaker Horror for 7 mana, 7/8 with flash, can't be countered. Whenever you cast a spell, choose one. Return target spell you don't control to its owner's hand. That's basically just a Divide by 0 without the learn. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, right? Very, very, very good. And then, you know, we've got the flash spells. We have the instant speed spells to make sure that once the horror is in play, we keep control of the match. Other than that, we have really nice synergies between the Glorious Sunrise for 5 mana, a new enchantment, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, choose one. Creatures you control get +1/+1, gain trample until the end of turn. That's great on the horror. We can have target land tapped for 3 mana until the end of turn. Wow, we're going to talk more about that in a sec. We can draw a card if we control a creature with power 3 or greater, which is the horror, or we could gain 3 life. So what's nice here is Glorious Sunrise comes out for 5. Hopefully we have 6, but it is what it is. Even if we only have 5, we are utilizing the Sculptor of Winter to untap target snowland, right? So that will be 6 mana for us through the Glorious Sunrise. 3 mana, we tap it, we untap it, there's another 3 mana. Really cool stuff, right? We can utilize that straight on the Horror, but ideally we have Jacob, the Inspector here, a 0/2. We can tap it to draw a card, exiling a card from our hand face down. You may look at that card as long as it remains exiled, and you may pay 6 if you do transform Jacob. We can flip that around really quick because it's important to show you guys. Bop-a-da-bop-bop-bop. Here we are, flipperonis. We get the Insight, and at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library face down. You may look at that card for as long as it remains exiled, and once during each of your turns, you may play a land or cast a spell from among cards in exiled with this permanent without paying its mana cost. So we are tapping it, exiling our Horror, right? And then we have Sculptor of Winter with the Glorious Sunrise to flip it, at which point, for free, with flash, and can't be countered, we cast the Horror. Once we have the Horror in on their end step, you know, it ain't nothing but a thing, which is really cool. And then it's, you know, Fading Hope, Field Trip, Divide by 0, all activating the Horror's abilities. If we go back to our gallery here, it's a little bit better view. We do have the Sinopate to counter basically anything. We'll have so much mana that X will equal more than they have available, which is cool. We have the Reclusive Taxidermist, which is really nice ramp alongside that Sculptor for us as well. And then Field Trip to help us dig for those lands. We have Lair because the X is great, right? We have a ton of mana to sink into this. And then Hall of the Storm Giants as well. Keep in mind, Glorious Sunrise can give not only the Hullbreaker Horror Trample, but Lair of the Hydra and Hall of the Storm Giants. That's really, really good. And that +1/+1, don't forget about this. We're learning for the sciences, the teachings, Introduction to Annihilation, who cares, right? And then Mascot Exhibition, right? Just kind of your average sideboard for the learn ability via Divide by 0. So that's the deck. I'm most excited about this one. It's oh man, what a deck. Really, really cool. I cannot wait to be casting this Horror from my grave for free that can't be countered and, you know, has a flash. So that's going to be a ton of fun. Glorious Sunrise with the Horror via Sculptor of Winter and Jacob, and then just kind of filling around. That's what this deck is about. So that's all I have for you guys today. 5 brand new Crimson Vow decks. I hope you are excited as I am. Some of these cards are ridiculous. But will they be better than Alrund's Epiphany? I don't know. Hopefully Sinopate can help us through those troubled times. But nonetheless, just super excited about the build. Have a magical day, you guys. Thanks so much for watching. I really do appreciate your time and attention. Make sure to like the video to support, subscribe to the channel to help me meet my goals, and maybe even become a patron. Whatever you decide to do, definitely join the Discord as a very minimum. That's available within my Linktree link in the description below. Check out some other of my videos. I went through all of the spoilers, and we've been doing theory crafting videos as well to get you guys ready for Crimson Vow, plus the top ranked Mythic decks as well. So we've got you covered, even doing limited gameplay. So whatever you guys are looking for content-wise, we've got you covered. Woohoo! Have a magical day, and we'll see you soon in the next.